All right, we are live. Welcome to the Enter Player 3 podcast. First ever episode. God help us. I am Josh, also known to some of you as Freud, my online moniker, and I am joined by my friend and co host, Kraig. Hi, Kraig.
Hello.
How are you doing
Also
today?
Tungsten Phoenix. I'm good. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night, but I got French toast this morning, so I'm like, good to go. Let's go.
That
Let's
makes
do
up
it.
for it. And I kind of talked over you, but Kraig is also known as Tungsten Phoenix online. You can follow him at Tungsten Phoenix, right? No numbers at
Plug.
the end.
Yeah, no, just Tungsten
Yeah.
Phoenix.
And I am at a Freudian Trip. Those are our online names on Twitch and Twitter, but a lot of you probably already know that. So welcome. Um, like I said, this is the Enter Player 3 podcast, first episode. Podcast where two millennial dads will talk about the things we love, which is primarily games and related culture, but from a new lens, new, especially new to me, a little less new to you. That lens being that we are now fathers. Kind of weird for me, at least.
I'm used to it now.
You're used to
I'm
it now.
I'm used to it now. Because he's almost 3. He's
Yeah,
almost 3,
man. I keep
and
forgetting
I
how
got it
old your kid is.
right, and I've got another one coming now.
You have another one coming?
Yeah,
I did not know this.
you didn't know that?
No.
I feel like we talked about it in chat, and I feel like we talked about, or I just posted, is like 2
Oh
weeks
my
ago now, I
god.
think. Posted a picture on Facebook, although I'm never on Facebook, so
Dude, I'm never on
I don't know
Facebook
what you
either,
get.
so that's why I would have
Yeah.
missed it.
Yep.
Congratulations, about to be a
Thank you.
father of two.
Thank you.
That is amazing. Well, you will have a
Yes.
unique perspective on what that's like to add to this
Oh
podcast.
God. I mean, in a few months, yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah, Kelly's pregnant again, and that's always fun.
oh
Pregnancy's
yeah.
fun.
I still remember that quite well. That's quite sharp in my memory.
I was about to
So
say, yeah, because I'm so sorry, Annie, right?
Annie, that is our other friend's wife.
God dang it!
Nice try. Shout out to
No, I
Gabe.
was thinking I was thinking the baby.
Oh, the baby's
Sorry,
name is
what is
Raylin.
baby's name? Raylan.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for context, I have a 5 month old beautiful baby girl named Raylin. So I've only been a father for 5 months. Craig's child, you said, is 3 now.
Yeah, he's 3. Well, he will be in a couple weeks. Yeah, okay, I know why I thought it was Anne. It was because of, was it Notch? And
Oh,
somebody kept suggesting that you name them Anne Freud.
that's right. Yes,
So
yes, that would
that's
be fitting.
probably why
But
I thought that.
we didn't actually name her Anne. Uh,
Anyways,
so yeah, we should probably talk about games at some point.
at some point.
But that's who we are. We are two lifelong gamers. I know I have been. I think that's my understanding of you as well. Loved gaming for all of our lives, but as we get older, we now have some children. But we're not going to change. We still love games. We still love all the related gaming news and stories, and we wanted to talk about them together. And that was kind of the beginning of this podcast. And that's kind of I think our hope for this podcast is to give both of us a chance. Weekly is the plan. Having kids, if there are any other parents out there, you know very well that having kids kind of sets your schedule and kind of disrupts it. But the hope is to weekly have a chance for us to get together, talk about um, gaming topics and news as they come up, but from a lens of what it means to be a dad, continue to be a gamer. I guess kind of some of the perspective that brings.
So then, just real quick question, because this just popped in my head when you were talking about us being lifelong gamers. What was the first game you ever played?
Oof. The first game that I can ever remember playing was the OG Super Mario Bros. On the NES. My gaming, so I did not own the NES actually when I was a kid, but when I was like around 4 or 5, I had an uncle who had an NES, and I would love going over to his house to play. And that is the first game I remember playing. Of course, I played some of the other Mario games on the Super Nintendo, and then Sonic on the Sega Genesis. And that was actually my first game console, was the Sega Genesis.
That's
and
crazy.
Sonic was my first game.
That's hilarious because I remember when I was like, I want to say about 3 or 4. I have some really oddly early memories for a person.
Mm-hmm.
When I was like 3 or 4, I used to go over to my uncle's house because he would babysit me, and I would play Sonic on the Genesis.
Wow, that is weird.
Yeah,
Actually,
right.
I did not know that.
I was like, oh, hey, that's
There you
great.
go. Yeah,
I
man,
think
such a
then my
classic.
mom had a PlayStation, or no, my mom's boyfriend had a PlayStation, and I played all the Crash games and Metal
Mm.
Gear and Spyro and Croc. God, those were great games. And then my first personal console was a Dreamcast. I didn't get one until I was a
Ooh,
little bit older. So
Dreamcast. Now there's a system.
yeah, right.
Never owned a Dreamcast, but I had some friends that did. I was after the Sega Genesis, I was actually a Nintendo kid um, until like college. I only owned Nintendo consoles, so I had the 64, the GameCube, and then the Wii. And then finally, well, I also had a PC. I should say I had a PC, so I did a little PC gaming. And in college, got an Xbox. I branched out from it. Yeah, so I played all the Nintendo classics. Zelda, of course, being shouldn't say of course, but that ended up being my favorite franchise. But all the Mario games as well. Um, yeah.
I never actually got an Xbox until the one.
Oh, really? The
Yeah, even
360? You skipped the
so
360.
well.
Wow.
So freshman year in college, when I started playing games with friends and stuff, because before video games, well, no, I played some Xbox 360 with friends in high school, but not much, like Gears and whatnot. But in college is when it really picked up in earnest, and we had an Xbox 360 in my dorm room because one of the guys upstairs, his roommates wouldn't let him have it up there, and they didn't have a TV anyways.
Hmm.
And we had a TV, so he was like, "Hey, I'll just bring this down here. We can all come over and play," and it was great, and that's how we did.
There you go.
and then um and then I just couldn't justify the cost of it
Yeah.
until the one came out, and I was like, okay, if I want to play with friends, I need to get this console. So I finally got that. Before that, I had a PS3.
I mean, I will say, I think you're hitting a little bit on a kind of a key difference in console generations. That being that the earlier consoles, like the Xbox and the Xbox 360, so much of the multiplayer was focused on like split screen and LAN environments, where it's like I didn't actually need an Xbox to play the original Halo because a lot of my friends had it, and so I would just go over to their house and we play split screen all night long. And
Yep.
so like I played that game to death and loved it, never actually owned it.
Yeah.
That's how it was back then. And I guess I'm not really sure. I mean, the consoles and the games definitely were made for that back then. You know, like even now with the Xbox One, there was actually controversy around a lot of games not even having split screen for their multiplayer.
Yep.
So there is that, but I also wonder if part of it is just kind of growing up too, where you can't go to your friends' houses often. You don't live in a college dorm anymore, right?
Yeah, well, I live in Montana. You guys are
Yeah.
over in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Another person's, up in Washington. Someone's over in Wisconsin, or not, somewhere over there,
Yeah.
far away in a different time zone. We're all split up and everything. And
It's
and
true.
even if we weren't, like, what kind of time do we got to go hang out with people?
Yeah.
You have to like schedule those. Those are basically dates. It's time to schedule, it's time to plan,
It
get
is.
things in order. Because
Girl.
you can't just hop over to your friend's house after school and go play some games until your mom calls you home and make dinner, because you're making dinner now. Your dad, your mom,
Yeah.
you're
Right?
adults. Yeah.
Yeah, to anyone listening who is not a grown up yet, there's no rush.
No.
Enjoy every moment as life gives it to you, because it will always change. Yeah. Growing up is hard. Exciting,
really
but yeah. Well, I think maybe that's a little insight introduction into our gaming pedigree and who we are. But because time is short, we should probably launch ourselves into some of the topics that we wanted to talk about today.
Let's do it.
The first one is a bit of a broad one, but it's a big one, and it is the rise of esports. This is something that I've actually been interested in for a number of years now, and every year that I've been following it, I'm continually surprised by how much bigger it keeps getting. For fun, this morning I pulled up some headlines just from this week. Esports headlines this week: Drake invested in an esports company. 100 Thieves is now a
I heard
co-owner,
about
I
that.
believe.
Yeah.
Michael
Yeah.
Jordan has invested in Team Liquid this week. Colleges are starting to launch their own programs, including Ohio State. Ohio State University is launching their own esports program, so it's in colleges now. I mean, it is actually insane how fast and how big esports is growing. Um, do you follow esports very much, Kraig? What's your experience with
Uh,
it?
so I used to. I don't have a lot of time. It's either a lot of my time is either game or be doing adult stuff.
Yeah.
And I choose to game. I don't have a lot of time to really spend on esports. My wife doesn't really care to watch it either.
Hmm.
To her, it's very much in the same vein. Actually, she prefers to watch real sports if she, I think, in earnest, like if we had to watch a football game
Mm-hmm.
or a siege match,
Yeah.
she'd pick football. Um, so I don't get a whole lot of time, and what time I do have, there's a lot of other things. I used to watch in deep earnest the LCS,
Oh yeah.
the League of Legends Championship Series. That was a favorite of mine. I followed it for a long time because I played League of Legends. Actually, that was how before I had an Xbox, or before the Xbox One. That's basically how most of my friends played. Was we would play League on our laptops together,
Nice.
and that was how we stayed together for probably like the 4 years we were together. Maybe not even that. It was like 3 years before the one came out. And we were super caught up in all of that. We'd watch the LCS, and one time we tried to have a party for the World Cup or World Championship.
Mm-hmm. Which is
It didn't
ongoing
come
right now,
together.
actually.
Is it? Oh, it
Yeah.
would be because it's October. But that I cooled when I left playing League because I just didn't like what the developers were doing with it. It didn't work well for a casual player kind of thing.
Fair enough.
And
Yeah.
I was kind of over it. And when I left that, I was sort of when you leave a game, you kind of leave
You kind of leave the esports scene a
the
little bit.
yeah, a little bit, I think.
I can
I've
relate
been
to that.
trying I've been trying to get into Siege,
Mm-hmm.
Rainbow Six Siege. Like because it's a really fun game to play, but watching the games can be super dry.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lack of commentators. I don't think they're quite on a level that they need to be for it to be an esport on the same level as like League of Legends or Overwatch.
Yeah,
Um,
it is amazing how much of a difference having good commentators, good
oh,
shoutcasters can make,
yes.
and the observer settings that are built into the esport. That's something that's been really interesting to watch. So I love the game Overwatch, and I'm a huge Overwatch League fan. The first Overwatch League season was earlier this year, and the second season starts in February. Um, and so I watched a lot of that. I watched it every week. And my gracious wife was kind enough to watch some of it with me. She was pregnant at the time. Um, so I would joke that our baby was going to come out like knowing all the Overwatch lingo, but and was probably going to be like a tracer main or something. But anyway, uh, so I would watch it quite a bit, and it was very interesting to see the evolution of the observer settings and how the camera was positioned to show what was going on, how they would integrate replays, all that kind of stuff. Because for anyone that knows Overwatch, it can be a very fun game to play, but there's so much happening on the screen, and so many of the player roles are different, that it is actually, I think, one of the harder esports to watch. Similar to a game like League of Legends, where there's so much strategy and so much happening, I think, sometimes behind the scenes that for the casual observer, while you might still be able to kind of get some excitement from watching, a lot of what's happening is going to be missed. But to that end, so I think this is part of the topic that I want to talk about, is it would be very easy to make the same argument about real sports. I say real sports. What I should say is athletic sports. I think that's another controversy. Are esports real sports, right? There's so much we could get into here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a broad topic, like you said.
it really is. But a lot of people that struggle with esports, what they'll say is, I have no idea what's happening. If I don't play this game,
Hmm.
how can I enjoy watching it?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't. Yeah, what is your thought on that? Is it possible for someone who does not play a video game, to enjoy the esport of it?
Yeah, I like my first initial thought is yes, because it's the same as any athletic sport, honestly. You're not born with an inherent knowledge of how football works. I've watched I've watched the Super Bowl in several seasons ever since high school.
Mm.
Because of fantasy and stuff. I still don't know all the rules to football.
Yeah.
I don't, like there's a bunch of calls that they'll make, and I'll be like, I don't know what just happened.
Hmm.
What happened? Or people start cheering, and I'm like, why was that cool? I don't quite get it. And I think it's the same for any other, or for any esports, that it's just you can glean and you can learn how it works just by watching it, or by like, if you have an interest in it, be like, oh, I want to go look, I want to go find out how this works. I'm going to go, what was this, what was that, what did they do here, what was that. I could see it being a little or a little more difficult in esports,
Hmm.
maybe.
So I
No,
think.
because even football has, like, because I've known a lot of like kids and other friends who are fanatical over football, and so
Hmm.
they'll know everything from, like, oh, the coach should do this call or that call, or don't do that or this or that, just
Right.
everything,
Right.
everything down to the nitty gritty play. They could be shot callers or whatever if they wanted to.
Hmm.
Um,
And
and
they
so
aren't necessarily football players themselves, right?
exactly, yeah. One of anyways, yeah, they're not necessarily football players themselves, but they've learned all of that, and they've consumed so much of it that that knowledge base is there.
Yeah.
You could do the same for esports. I think the issue with esports is that inherently it's going to be more fun to play the game than to
Mm.
watch, like, ever. The
And you have the
reason that
ability; it's easier to play.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anybody could do it.
Uh
Anybody could
huh.
pick it up and learn how to play if they've got, like, if they've got some basic fundamentals, or if they've got the wherewithal to learn them.
Right.
Which
That.
also, could be said to a degree for athletic sports, although
Well, but to a much
athletic
lesser
sports make
degree.
a physical, yeah, because it requires a physical capability that some people don't have, or that time has passed for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think like, to be fair, you could say like, oh well, if you want to if you watch football, want to play it, go buy a football, and a friend, I guess, to at least throw back and forth. But like to actually play the game of football, you've got to be
yeah,
pretty strong. You've got to have bones that don't break very easily, which probably puts you in a certain age bracket, right?
yeah,
And you've got to have 22 other people, because I think there's
yeah,
11 players on each side, something like that. And so,
yeah. Like,
like
you
to.
could throw a football back and forth, but, like, in an esports sense, that'd basically be the same as going into a custom match and shooting each other back and forth until you're bored to death.
Right. And so I think, you know, to the credit of esports, it's far more accessible. If you walk into a living room and someone's watching esports, you can see that game, and then if you've got a computer or an Xbox, go home, immediately download it and play it yourself, which is
Yep.
pretty cool. It's not going to be at the level that you're watching. I think
No.
there's a lot of the excitement from esports comes from just the same as the excitement of watching the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
You're watching the best in the world play a
Yes.
game that you enjoy to some extent, and they're playing it at the highest level in the world.
Exactly.
Um,
I was
so
gonna
they're
say
gonna,
that too. I think
yeah.
that's really the allure of esports, is that you're seeing the pinnacle of play in
Mm-hmm.
this game. You can see what's possible, because that's one reason to watch esports as well, is if you do play, there's a lot of things you can learn. There was a
Oh,
period of time
absolutely.
where I was watching a lot of Siege because I wanted to learn what they were doing, and I learned a lot of things. There were peak spots, there were wall bangs, there were things that there was, like, spawn peaks. I was like, I never seen that before. I'd never even thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use that in a
Yeah,
ranked match now.
absolutely.
And so it's, there's certainly definitely more than just one reason to watch esports. But I think just, like, using it as a one-to-one from, football fanatics to esport fanatics, I feel like esport fanatics is lacking the numbers, simply because it's a little harder to be fanatical about something that you can just play at your fingertips. Or maybe it's just not there yet. Maybe it's just, it's
So I
still in
think
its
it's
infancy, in all honesty.
that is my so my that is my opinion. Actually, I think it has more to do with just how new esports still is. But it kind of goes, it leads into my next question related to esports, I guess, which is, there's a lot of pushback against it,
Hmm.
mostly from traditional sports fans, saying like, especially since ESPN has really expanded the esports
Yeah.
coverage. Not only does it have its own esports page where it covers all the news related to a variety of different esports, but they've ABC recently. Um, reached a deal with the Overwatch League to actually show some of their matches on ESPN and
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
even ABC itself
Yep.
from time to time.
I've
And
seen that on ABC Family, I believe, or I think it's Freeform now. Like
So
I
yeah,
think
they
I've seen that.
were during the playoffs. I think some of it was on ESPN. There's definitely it was on ESPN 3, which is a streaming service. And then I think like Disney, some of the like Disney XD or some of the Disney channels
Maybe that's what
were
it
actually
was. Yeah.
showing it too.
Yeah.
So anyway, like it's the exposure is growing, but there's been a lot of pushback from traditional sports fans saying this is not real sports. Why are you throwing this in my face? Why would I be interested in watching this?
Mm-hmm.
And why should I think what these esports pros are doing is impressive in any way and comparable to more traditional athletic sports pros? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that traditional sport fans have the wrong idea about this. I don't think that, like, okay, look at ESPN is, yes, it's the home of sports and everything, but I think first and foremost it is a money-making machine.
Mm-hmm.
Um to think that the top executives at ESPN and ABC, or is that who they're owned by?
Yeah,
Is it
I think so. ABC or Disney, I
um
think owns all of it, but
yeah, Disney owns everything. The top executives at those companies, they're not thinking about, our traditional sport fans are really gonna love the Owls. They're thinking we can expand our viewer base into these people who do not watch traditional sports
hmm
into their home world of esports, and then we'll have everybody. Think
yeah,
about that's like doubling our money. Plus, look at the kind of the numbers these things are pumping out. Like this is
hmm
just a good investment, and so I think it's the wrong idea that a lot of traditional sport fans have about it. It's not for them.
right,
If you happen to be in the cross section of both of them, awesome, cool, great, that's good for you. But if you don't watch the Owls. Go watch football, go watch baseball, go watch basketball. Watch what you want. This isn't for you. This is for other people, and all they're trying to do is widen their reach. All they're
hmm
trying to do is get more money. And I don't think that there's nothing there necessarily anything inherently wrong with that. I think it's a little opportunistic, but I think it affords an opportunity for growth in the industry that may not be there otherwise.
yeah. No, I agree. I think it makes a ton of sense for big companies like Disney, to kind of expand their reach and to start covering esports because I the rise of esports is like meteoric, and I think it's going to continue. And so to not do it would be a horrible business move.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and it's gotten this crazy bump from Fortnite and Ninja.
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the cultural rise is
Yeah.
a huge part of this, right? And I actually do think culture and cultural change, I guess, I think is actually a huge part of this. Like the pushback, um, a lot of the pushback that I see from more traditional sports fans, like this is stupid. Why would I care about this? Why is playing a game impressive at all? Um, Falls flat as soon as you actually look at like the underpinnings of those arguments, where it's like, yes, what they're doing isn't athletic, but it is still very hard to do. No
Yeah.
one else can do it in the world. Um,
Could
just
easily be
like
turned on them. Can you do it?
Right. Can
No.
you throw a football like Tom Brady? No, you can't. Have you even played football ever in your life? Like, maybe not. There are so many baseball fans, football fans, soccer fans, basketball fans that outside of maybe playing with their friends when they were a kid, right? Never
Yeah.
really played those sports and yet are huge fans. And that's fine.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's where kind of like cultural change comes into play. Like for example, I'm a pretty big football fan and soccer fan, and I never played those sports as a kid. But
Hmm.
I've loved watching them, and I've watched them enough that I actually do know enough about the rules and the strategy to appreciate them on a deeper level every time I watch, to catch things I would have never caught, the first time I ever watched the sport.
Yeah.
Um, but like I grew up with those on the TV in the house. Like I didn't get into those sports because I played them myself. I got into them because I was exposed to them enough as a kid that I just started getting an interest in them. It was a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And for a lot of especially older adults, they did not grow up with esports being a reality at
Yeah.
all, right?
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that I think that it comes down to a lot of that as well. There's an age thing, and cultural change is scary.
yeah.
And we grew up with our parents very strictly limiting our video game time. At least
Mm-hmm.
mine did, and
Oh,
a
mine
lot of
too.
my friends did.
Yeah.
Because it was like it was a pastime, but it wasn't necessarily culturally accepted on a level that it is nowadays. And I mean, like I'm gonna limit my son's video game time as well, but I'm also not gonna be like I was told growing up that you can't play video games for a living. Stop
Mm.
playing that. Let's go
Yep.
do this.
Yep.
And now here we are.
Ninja's making like
So
$1 million
this,
a month playing video
yeah,
games for a living. So
I mean, Ninja's obviously
he's
a
he's like,
exception too. He's
yeah, no one makes that much,
yeah,
right? Like he's like at the
yeah,
top, but there's a huge range. There are
yeah,
people like Ninja at the top making $1 million a month, and then people closer to like the bottom of the spectrum making like maybe 1,000 or 2 month. But
yeah.
even
Like
and
you
then
can still
everything in
make a
between,
living off.
you
Yeah,
can. It's possible. Whether it's a part-time job, full-time job, whatever. Like the business opportunity from video games is just totally blown up. So
but that's
Twitch,
not
YouTube.
that age range. There's the baby boomers and the older. I want to say Y's, or was it X? Because older X's.
Yeah,
It's scary for them.
right.
It's understandable. It's their entire world is shifting in front of them. Like they see the people who are going to be taking over for them, and it's scary, and they don't want to let go.
Yeah,
And
which
uh,
will probably happen. Do you ever wonder if that'll happen to us at some point? Like, when's the world
I
going to
think
start
about
looking
that.
scarier for us?
Yeah, I think about that all the time because I'm so frequently frustrated with older people in our world right now that I'm just like, go, just please go, leave so that we can take over. I'm over. And
Yeah,
then I sit there and think, God, are we gonna be like that?
I
We're gonna
know.
just
And then we
take the
will
reins and then
actually
never
take
let go.
over and be afraid to let go for the younger generations,
Yeah,
and history will repeat itself.
hate that. Hate that so much.
That's hard to get
But
away. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I do think generational gaps are huge here, and I wonder, like, if I continue to watch esports, um, like I have been the last number of years, I wonder, like, as my kids like will grow up and it'll just be something they're exposed to. Is it possible that kids growing up will become interested in watching esports for games they don't even play?
yeah,
Now, their ability to play those games, like I said, I think it is more accessible than
oh yeah.
traditional sport like football, right?
Hmm.
They'll I'm going to have a computer. They'll be able to hop on the computer once they're old enough and possibly play some of these games like Overwatch themselves if they want to. But I guess I just wonder if there might be a similar trend where kids grow up watching esports and enjoying esports for games they don't play, just like I grew up really liking the NFL, and watching the World Cup, even though I never played those
Yeah.
sports.
So here's a weird tangent off of that. It is related, but I was just thinking about it earlier today, and how automation is taking a lot of base level jobs and even higher level jobs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Factory jobs, things that used to be extremely prevalent are now becoming completely automated,
Yeah.
and our population is still growing.
Right.
So, what are people going to start doing for jobs? And I think that I think that a lot of our, if you kind of look at an overview of our culture and our current history,
Mm-hmm.
I think things are really starting to sort of edge towards entertainment.
Hmm.
I think I could see it possibly being a case where there's significantly more jobs in the entertainment sector, and I think there's going to be significantly more people vying as content creators, even as time goes on, simply because there aren't going to be entry level jobs like that anymore. Like as it stands on professional basis, people want you to have 3 years of experience on an entry level job.
Yeah.
That's
Or yeah.
that's not like labor or something,
Right.
and you can't do that because I've been in school for 4 years to get this bachelor's degree that means nothing, that you say I need for it, but now I don't have the experience,
Mm-hmm.
which for a lot of employers seems to be more important. So I think a lot of, and I've seen that a lot with our generation as it is, and so I see a lot of people going towards Twitch and YouTube and being like, I could do this, I could totally do this.
Right.
And we have kids now who are growing up with that culture as that is celebrity.
Oh
It's no
yeah.
longer, I mean, like it's still going to always be, the basketball stars, the football stars, the
Right.
musicians, but now they're celebrity. Our
Yeah.
children's generation of celebrity is esports stars, is content creators.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I could see that shift happening culturally. And so it could be really interesting, especially if it expands at the same rate that it's expanding now and it continues on that way. There's definitely going to be jobs open in the entertainment sector, editing jobs, lighting for events, just
Yeah.
jobs we haven't even thought of yet for that.
Right. Right.
And so just thinking about how possible it would be that our whole entire country and culture goes into this entertainment industry
Hmm.
outside of, I guess other traditional jobs, more traditional jobs.
Yeah. That is a fascinating concept. I had not thought about that. I think that's a big one. There's a lot. There's a lot there that I'm probably not educated enough to really answer. Like, what does it mean that so many jobs are automated, and what does that mean about the wage gap? And
Yeah.
will there be money to fund this growth of entertainment? And so
Right.
all that kind of stuff. But it's a really interesting idea. It is, for what it's worth, this form of online entertainment. Um, is a form of entertainment and a form of possible income that is far more accessible than the entertainment field used to be. I
Yeah.
mean, before you could have the best voice in the world, but no one would care and no one would know unless you somehow got it in front of like a producer that wanted to sign you.
Right.
Now you can sing on YouTube, and that can actually launch your career. I mean, Justin Bieber is probably like the most relevant example of, well, I don't know if he's relevant anymore. He was like 5 or 10 years ago. But right, that's what launched his whole multi-million billion-dollar career.
Yep.
And I know there's tons of other stories like that now. And that's just the music industry. There's acting, there's just vlogging. I mean, esports, Twitch,
Yep.
lots of different ways to get your face and name out there and possibly make money from it. It's really interesting. Bit of a tangent, but it's a good one.
Yeah. Right. Sorry.
No, we're open to tangents
It
here.
felt valuable to the conversation. So.
Your contributions are always valuable, Craig.
Aww.
Don't you feel bad? All right, but we should let's move on to there was another big topic that we wanted to tackle this podcast, this first episode, and it is one that is extremely relevant this week. It is the issue of crunch in the video game industry. This is off the tails of a very large news story about Rockstar. For listeners, if anyone listens to this cast weeks from now, it is October 27th, and Red Dead Redemption 2 just launched yesterday. Of course, developed by Rockstar, a very large company that has been under fire the last week or two. It all started when one of the lead writers of Red Dead Redemption 2 made a comment during an interview saying that for a while they were working 100-hour weeks to prepare to finish this game. For context, that is, I believe, working 12 or 13-hour days, all 7 days of the week. He later clarified and said that it was just a few employees that were choosing to work that much. But since then, a flood of stories has come out from other Rockstar employees. And Jason Schreier over at Kotaku.com wrote a very large article about it. Please go to Kotaku and read it. It's very well worth the read. Talking about all kinds of stories of employees working crunch for spans that varied from a few weeks to multiple months to maybe even almost a year, where they were required or felt required to work weekends, stay late, put in 60 to even 80-hour weeks at times, which to me sounds kind of insane. But
it's insane.
But there has been this, and I've heard developers talk about it, this kind of culture of crunch in the video game industry for quite a while, and that it's like this expected thing that if you get into the industry, it's going to be expected of you to crunch and put in insane hours to finish, and that's just kind of a part of the job. That idea is now being challenged. So I guess first, before we talk about like Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically, I guess I'm curious what your whole reaction is to this whole concept of crunch and how it plays out in the video game world.
That's absolutely insane. Like a year is not a year is not crunch time.
Right.
That's far too long. That's
Yeah, and to be
man, like if you
fair,
haven't met your deadline, if you haven't been hitting deadlines
mhm,
by a year before release, you need to extend. You need to look at what's happening and be like, "Oh, we need to push this back out because this isn't happening in the time we've allotted for it." Like that's not okay.
yeah,
Um for you to have an entire year of crunch. That's insanity. Like a month of crunch, I get it. I know like a month before release is far too late to be doing anything polishing on the game because that's like getting servers ready and stuff.
mhm,
So maybe at most I could see a quarter of crunch that
yeah,
would make some kind of logical sense. But like I feel like anything, like I guess once you're in the quarter of release, it's too late for anything.
mhm,
You're committed, you're in it. But if you're consistently not meeting your deadlines on game development, uh, a year before release, you need to push it out
yeah,
because you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not doing your employees any favors. You're not doing the gamers any favors because like work suffers after 40 hours.
right.
I think work suffers after even less, technically speaking. I don't remember. I read stupid articles all day long.
Yeah,
But I know that like there is a certain point at which your work suffers to a point that it's not worth the effort that you're expending.
right.
So you don't do that. Furthermore, and I don't know how many people in the world are aware of this. I know I've read multiple articles about this from other people, and there's been a few strikes, especially in the voiceover community for this. But especially large game development companies are notorious for not having actual employees, but for having oh shoot, what are they called? When
Unions?
you're no uh contractors.
Oh,
You're contracted for a game. You're
right.
contracted for a development period,
Mhm,
and as a contractor you don't get benefits. You
right,
get X amount of pay. You kind it's super scummy, honestly, because you're kind of like on salary, but you don't get the benefits,
right.
and you kind of have to do your own taxes, and it sucks. And they've been doing. I know that they do that a lot. A lot of different game companies have done that for a lot of different games in order to minimize cost.
Yeah,
That's not okay, especially if you have this culture of crunch where it's a year before game time and it's like, okay, head down, 100-hour weeks, let's go.
yeah,
That's some BS. You can't
yeah.
do that to people. Like,
I
it's inhuman at
I
that point.
yeah, I tend to agree. I think so to be fair, like crunch is a broad term that can mean a lot of things. As far as like how many hours that means, right? And for how long. But with this Rockstar story about the development of Red Dead Redemption 2, um, tons of employees talked to Jason Schreier, and so again, please go read his report. So what a lot of them said was that their average weekly hours came between like 55 to 60 hours, which would be, again, for context, that is 6 10-hour days. So you're working 10-hour days, 6 days a week, which is still to do that, for that to be the average for months or even like a year or more is kind of insane to me. And again, a big part of this too is what you bring up, which is that people's kind of like security in the company and pay structure can be really different. So a big part of the article is about some of the QA testers. Some were salaried, and
Ugh.
how much they work does not correspond with how much they get paid at all. And then there were others that were more contracted or on temporary job, like contracts, so they would get paid overtime, but they also felt like they would have to crunch to get rehired because their job is
Yeah.
temporary. And there are stories in this um, about supervisors coming to employees and asking them why they're only working 40-ish hours a week and not working more. About employees being asked to come in during the weekends because a higher up was going to be there that weekend, and they needed the office to look busy on the weekend to like appease kind of the higher ups. There are stories in there about about like, you know, dinners regularly being catered because again they're expected to be there past like 7:30 at night. It's like, I guess they're paying for their meal. That's nice, but like it's required for them, or you know, like
Use the money for overtime. Why would you do that?
yeah, it's just it's crazy. And then one of the things that really blew my mind was that a lot of employees talked about how they would be told they need to work some extra weekends, they need to be putting in more hours during the week, but not be given an actual production objective. So it's not, we need you to work extra hours because we need to meet this deadline. It's, we just need you to work extra hours.
So they're just bleeding people dry is all they're doing. They're
And
just trying
so
to get
it's,
their money's worth.
and it's
That's
just
so messed up.
it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of crazy. There's, and again, there were a lot of employees that had different, to be fair, at Rockstar, there were a lot of employees that had different experiences. They worked about 40-hour weeks or close to that, or when they crunched, it was because they honestly wanted to. They were really, you know, really kind of feeling passionate about their job, and no one was expecting them to. But unfortunately, that was not the case for a large amount of the employees. And I tend to think too, like, you know, for every employee that speaks out about this, that there are probably many other employees with similar experiences that were too afraid to speak out. One of the things that came up a ton in these articles and some of these interviews were people admitting that they're really afraid to talk about this stuff. And the article even says that they omitted some of the worst stories that were shared because they were worried it would identify the employee. And so I can't even imagine that conditions for some of these employees were even worse than like what was being described in the article. So I think we're in agreement that crunch is bad. You know, that this culture of crunch is maybe bad, or I don't know. What do you think?
You know what I think it is? I think part of it, because I know Rockstar is owned by a larger corporation. I think part of it is we're at an intersection, and I think we've been seeing games suffer because of this for a little bit now. We're at an intersection where we have art on one hand, we have corporate America on another, and corporate America is trying to shove out art in order to make money.
Yeah.
And I mean, because that's what I personally am of the opinion that video games are art one way or another, whether they're good art, whether they're bad art. They are artistic at their core. They're storytelling machines. They are canvases for worlds, for people, for billions of frames of artwork, voiceover acting, writing, everything. It's like the culmination of all human art in one disc. If you think about it that way, it's super crazy. So then what happens is you have corporate America who's like, oh my god, video games are making tons of money, we need to get in on this because it's easy profit. Gamers are just going to buy whatever all the time, so let's get in this. And then when things aren't going the way that they want them to, they don't go the way they expect them to, because games art doesn't just happen, you know, like things happen, development hell exists, it's a real thing, and stuff happens, and corporate doesn't like that. The people who are paying the bills don't like that. The shareholders don't like when they're told, you know, hey, something happened, there's nothing that we can do about it, we're working on it, there's bugs, it's weird, I'm sorry, you know, it's just going to take a little bit more time. They don't want that. They want their profits, and they want the profits now. And so they put pressure on the higher ups, who put pressure on the lowers, and then lowers and lowers, and it finally gets down to a point where it's immense for middle management, who then put this crazy amount of pressure on the actual workers. And that happens in regular corporate environments. I don't see why it wouldn't happen in a gaming environment as well, when it's run like a corporate structure. When game development probably shouldn't be structured and run like that. Like, yes, it should be run and structured in form of like project management, but it shouldn't, like, people who are running these companies need to understand that stuff happens, and sometimes there are delays, and it's okay, but it's going to be the best thing that you can do for it is to just let it get worked out and give them the time to do it.
So I mean, I completely agree, especially in the interest of the workers, the people, the humans themselves. That should be the approach. I have heard a counter argument, and I think it's interesting specifically because, well, I'll say in a minute, but I've heard the counter argument that to make great art, requires great sacrifice, and that to make truly incredible games, that processes like this are necessary. Now, on the face of that, I want to cry BS.
Yeah.
But I also am aware that three of the game companies that are currently most notorious for game crunch are CD Projekt Red, which created The Witcher 3 and is currently developing Cyberpunk; Naughty Dog, which has an incredible pedigree for creating incredible single player games; and Rockstar, which is also has incredible pedigree for the types of games they create. Most notably the GTA and Red Dead franchises. They are some of the most notorious studios for crunch, and they are producing some of the best games that we have seen in the last decade, arguably. So, what does that mean? How do we? What I guess, yeah. What does that mean?
Okay, I don't disagree. To a degree, yeah, art requires sacrifice, but as an artist, like, you have to choose that sacrifice. It can't be forced upon you. Like, I can't think of anything that would kill my personal creativity anymore than if somebody was sitting over me being like, you have to do this and you have to do this right now. It's one thing for people to choose to go in for 60-hour, 100-hour weeks, be like, I have to get this done. I want to get this done. I personally need to get this done. Like, nobody's forcing me. I need to do this. And I know they're not notorious for it, but I think we can look at other examples where the case is that they were forced to do a lot of things and it ended up worse for it. And I use this example for everything, I swear to God, because it's like the pinnacle of how development hell can culminate into a terrible video game. But I think Destiny 1 is a really good example of that. I think there was so much pressure put on a lot of people, Bungie, that people just left. People said, screw it. I can't do this. Like, I have this creative vision that I love and that I know that people love, but I cannot do this.
Yeah.
I'm out. Goodbye. I think that's the difference. I think for a lot of those cases, there's probably a lot of passion behind those projects. These people are there and they're like, I want to see this game come to pass. This is a baby for me, and I'm willing to go through the birthing pains. But I don't think that's always the case. Yeah. I think that there's significant points at which, like, you have to be like, you can't force this. If people want to do it, then let them. But if they don't, you cannot force that.
Yeah.
I don't
agree.
see how it's not illegal, honestly.
I agree. So I mean, the reason well, there are labor laws in different countries, and so country labor laws do play effect. But I think probably the biggest argument is, well, they are choosing. They could quit, right? They are choosing in that way, which is true. But if you also think about it, like, a lot of people got into this industry because they're passionate about it. So it's kind of a crappy choice to be like, if you want to be in an industry that you love, you have to kill yourself and not have a family to do so.
It's not.
So that's crappy. But also, like, it's not like if you did decide to quit that there's going to be 50 other job openings just waiting for you, like exactly where you live, especially like to walk into, and so you can continue to have benefits and support your family. And so that's not really a reality either. But but I think you're right.
A lot of people who left Bungie were left because they knew that they could find elsewhere.
Yeah,
because they'd been with Bungie for a while. They were writers or something. They were people of relative renown in the industry, so they're
probably had enough resources to be unemployed for a while too. A lot of the lower level employees are not in that position at all.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but I do think you're right. This idea of like kind of being like great art requiring sacrifice and choosing that whether than being forced. I think it does get messy in the video game development world because a lot of times, right, it's the higher ups that have this vision who are directing the creation of the entire video game, but they can't build it all on their own. They have to have, hundreds of employees, like in the case of Rockstar, to actually make this vision come true. And so, then it becomes like this culture of crunch, I think, can very easily develop where you're trying to build a massive game like Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm only like 3 hours in. And I can already like just imagining how much time has gone into this is almost painful already, because the amount of detail in this game is beyond anything I have ever seen, and I'm only at the beginning of the game, and so I can already begin to appreciate how many countless hours of crunch must have been like a part of building this game. But to have a vision of that game, want to create it, but to need so many other people to basically do it for you, for like these head writers, for example, you can see how this concept of crunch can become ingrained even in the culture, where from the top down it just slowly seeps through. We need to be working harder and harder because I have this vision, and I also, like you said, have these higher ups that are like wanting to make money off of this and only wanting to fund this for so long before they demand profit, and we have to launch. That whole side of it now, really kind of muddies the water.
Now, I do think, like, okay, I've been dumping on the corporate policies and stuff, but I think there is another factor at play here as well that probably helps propel that forward, and I think that's also the consumers. I think I feel like games have gotten a lot more complicated over the years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you could probably bang out a Mario game in a year, maybe two, like old school Mario,
right,
like
right.
NES, whatever.
Yeah, platformer.
Now it's like, now considering the amount of detail, the artwork, everything that goes into these games, I think we need to expect that. I think as consumers, we need to expect that these development times increase significantly. And I think that we need to start being more okay with delays, because I think that's another thing. I think consumer reaction plays a lot into decisions.
Totally.
And I think that we need to kind of start understanding as gaming culture, as consumers, that we can't just be these ravenous zombies that we've been, because there are people on the other side of those discs, people who've made those discs with hard blood, sweat, and tears. And we need to be more understanding of the fact, like, we need more time. Otherwise, we're going to work people to death. Take more time. Do things. We need to be okay with it. And I don't think that anything in not only gaming culture but just in general culture of America kind of lends itself to that idea. I think we're so consumer driven right now.
It's consumer driven, and it's like immediacy is a huge part of that, right? Like, not only do I want this, I want it now. Amazon Prime is exploding right now, mostly because the promise is you can order almost anything you want and get it within 2 days. And Amazon is even like, they're trying to push that even further to get like same day delivery in some cities. And so it's, I want it and I want it now. No, I think that's a consumer, like, practices and attitudes is a huge topic, but I think it's a really important one, because I do think gamer consumers specifically tend to be impatient. And so that is a huge part of, like, how fast we get games out. And gamers also, the gamer community also really doesn't want to pay more than $60 a game. And you think about the fact that the cost of games have stayed at $60 despite how massive some of these games are, and how much money it costs to make them has grown exponentially. And yet somehow the cost is still $60. Red Dead Redemption 2, I don't even want to know how much money it took to make that. I don't know if that stat is out there. It might be released someday, how much money it took to make it, but it's still a $60 game. And so they're banking on people buying it enough to recoup how much it costs to make it. And if you compare like a $60 game like 10 years ago to like a $60 game now, it's insane. The quality is just, the quality and size of these games are so big for the cost to still be the same. It's kind of amazing.
You can play a game for thousands of hours at this point and still not be done with it. Whereas before, if you played a $60 game for a couple thousand hours, you're insane. You've done everything 100 times over. Why are you still playing this game?
I guess that's probably how the speedrunning community started developing, because it's like, I've played this game a million times. I guess I gotta add an element of challenge to it at this point. Like, there's nothing else to do.
Games are fundamentally changing in a lot of, and the industry has to change along with them, and I think consumer practices has to change along with them. I think loot boxes was an attempt at kind of probably recouping some of that money, I imagine.
Yeah.
and it didn't go over well. I think some people have done it right. Some people have done it very wrong. Um, I think there's just we're still in a learning phase.
Totally.
Honestly, like this is new territory for a lot of companies, and it's not things that you think about as a consumer. Because all you really see is game, play, yay, done.
Right.
Give me
Right.
more.
Right. Yeah.
Like at this point, almost if I were a developer, I'd be like, I'm not going to release a trailer. I'm not even going to announce this game if I can help it.
Well, a lot of people are, a
Until
lot of,
we're like
yeah,
almost done with it.
a lot of developers are doing that now, right? They're keeping games
Because
under
it
wrap.
seems like the smart thing to do at that point. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long this is going to take.
Yeah.
This may take for forever. We may have to extend it 3 or 4 times. People aren't going to like that.
Yeah.
So let's not announce anything until we're basically done
Right.
and
Right.
ready for beta testing.
Yeah.
And that honestly may be the way things have to go because of consumerism.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to cut the conversation short in interest of time. I actually think there's probably a lot more we could talk about here
Oh
with
yeah, we go on
you know,
and
the
on.
gamers as consumers, and the topic of crunch too. You know, like what are the solutions? What are the ways forward to try to keep this from happening? And should you boycott games, for example? I'm really against what happened at Rockstar, but I also bought Red Dead Redemption 2. What does that mean? You know, there's all kinds of ways we could take the conversation, but just of time, we do have to cut it short today. As we wrap up our first episode, thought I'd throw it back to you, Kraig. I'm curious what you've been playing this week. And yeah, that's about it.
A little bit of actually a lot of Destiny 2 right now
Yeah.
on my plate. Just I've been horking that down. That's they did such a good job with Forsaken. Honestly,
They did.
it's the best that game has ever been, and it makes me so happy. And this last week has been insane because it was our last week was the strongest the curse had been. Festival of the Lost dropped. Iron Banner. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I
It
have
was
to
a
do
lot.
everything. I have to play constantly to do anything in this game right now, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's still stuff to complain about. I mean,
Oh,
there's always
sure.
stuff to complain about in Destiny, but honestly, it's the best it's ever been.
So
And
I
I
mean,
love
like,
playing
I agree. I think Destiny is also the best it's ever been. I think, honestly, I think one of the reasons why is they've finally started developing it in a way where there's so much to do that has some kind of value or meaning or
Yeah.
just enjoyment. It's finally varied enough that to actually do everything, you do have to play it almost like a job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Which
you
is
do.
kind of
Yeah.
like closer to an MMO
Yeah.
kind of
There's still
structure, I guess. It's not an MMO. I wouldn't describe it as
it's
an
not.
MMO.
No. They still have a
But
long ways to go for that.
you're right. But I think you can draw a few similarities that way. Where it's like there's just that much to do now.
Yeah.
And you can kind of choose where you want to prioritize, what you want to work towards, which I think is great. I'm like a little bitter because I feel like it's finally becoming this huge, expansive, awesome
Yeah.
game just at
And
the
now
time
you
in
have
my
no
life
time.
where I have no time to play at all. And
Yeah.
so that's just me, right? I can't really
I'm
complain at Bungie too much for that, but
Yeah. I'm gorging myself right now in video games as much as I can because in like 6 months I'm out
mm,
for at least a month. I'm just
yeah,
like I won't have any time to play at all. I don't even
yeah,
know what it's going to be
it's so
like to have a
true.
newborn with a 2 or with a 3-year-old.
Oh
I
man,
feel like that's going to be insane.
yeah,
So
I can't
I'm
wait for you
just
to
like
tell us all about that.
just like give me all the video games I can stomach right now. And so
Yeah.
I've also been playing a bit of Horizon because
Oh yeah.
it's so beautiful
It is. I
and
played it
it's
for about an
so
hour this week
relaxing.
for the first time, and it's a stunningly gorgeous game.
It's gorgeous. It's so chill. The
Yeah.
music is awesome, and it's just a lot of fun to play. It's so much fun to play with cars. I've been playing with toy cars since I was a kid, and I just love playing with cars. Actually, my son, he's starting to get into Hot Wheels, and I could not be happier.
Yeah, that's exciting.
For his birthday, his grandma's getting him like this Hot Wheels track. Like it's got the loop de loops and
Nice. I
the
had
speed
those.
thing.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, oh yes, because I never got those as a kid, and I'm just like, I'm so excited to play with this track.
That's
It's
awesome.
I feel like it's dumb, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't care.
No.
It's so much fun.
We've all still got a kid inside of us, right?
Oh yeah.
That never goes away. You can try to stamp it out all you want, but it's never gonna go away. Might as well embrace it. As I stand like in front of me on the wall, I've got like Amiibo and little Legos, so
I've got a bunch of pop figures and toys already.
Yeah,
On this.
exactly. Yeah, so as for me, gosh, I didn't get to too much gaming this week. This week was really low on sleep for me. I did get in a little bit of Overwatch because the Halloween event is live, so I played a little bit of that. Still a big fan of Overwatch. Not as good as I would like to be, but are you ever really as good as you would like to be in games like that? And then I did get Red Dead Redemption at launch. Like I said, I'm only a few hours in. I'm still in like the beginning kind of prologue / tutorial part of it, but I can already tell it's going to be an incredible, massive experience. So I hope to have more to say about that, maybe our next episode. But
Exciting.
yeah, very exciting. But we need to wrap this up. We are at an hour actually. I think exactly.
I had people
So
busting down my door too. So
yeah, so that has been the first ever episode of Enter Player 3. For anyone listening, thank you so much. We hope to do this weekly. Follow us at A Freudian Trip or at Tungsten Phoenix on Twitter for more updates. We'll be tweeting out this episode and all the future ones, and we might even launch our own Twitter for this podcast someday. We'll see, but you can follow us there for now for more updates. I have been Josh with my friend and co-host here, Kraig.
Kraig.
We will see you next time. Have a great week.